Let's check the latest news updates from APARNA VATS.
Namaskar. Welcome to Friends World TV English Bulletin. Here are the headlines for today. Chandrayaan-2 successfully enters Moon's orbit. ISRO chairman terms it major milestone. Donald Trump dials PM Narendra Modi, who calls out Imran Khan. His anti-India talk doesn't help peace. Zakir Naik banned from public speaking in Malaysia following racial remarks against Hindus. Iceland holds ceremony for first glacier lost to climate change. Cardinal Pell's appeal verdict due but may not be the final word. Hong Kong protester targeted on Chinese social media platform WeChat following protest in Adelaide. Paying more than $10,000 in cash could make you a criminal under proposed law. The news in detail. Chandrayaan-2, India's second lunar exploration mission, has been successfully placed in the orbit of the Moon on Tuesday, August 20th. The Lunar Orbit Insertion (LOI) maneuver was completed at 9:02 a.m. as planned. ISRO said the spacecraft will touch down on the Moon's surface on September 7th. There will be 4 more orbit maneuvers to enable the spacecraft to enter into its final orbit, passing over the lunar poles at a distance of about 100 kilometers from the Moon's surface. Subsequently, the Vikram lander will separate from the orbiter on September 2. Since its launch on July 22, Chandrayaan-2 spacecraft has been in the orbit of the Earth. So far, the spacecraft has raised its orbit 5 times, from July 23rd to August 6th. According to ISRO, Chandrayaan-2 will shed light on a completely unexplored region of the Moon, the South Pole. The mission's success will make India the 4th country after Russia, the US and China to make a soft landing on the Moon. Sounds almost unbelievable, doesn't it? In the first phone conversation between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Donald Trump since the special status of Jammu and Kashmir was revoked 2 weeks ago, Modi told Trump that extreme rhetoric and incitement to anti-India violence by certain leaders in the region was not conducive to peace. This was clearly aimed at Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan, who has ratcheted up the rhetoric against India in the last 2 weeks. Hours later, Pakistan Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi told reporters in Islamabad that Khan too had spoken to Trump. Over the last fortnight, Khan threatened to teach Delhi a lesson, told Pakistan's parliament that incidents like Pulwama are bound to happen again. Significantly, the phone call came as US-Taliban peace talks enter a crucial phase. Trump said he spoke to his 2 best friends, discussing prospects for improved trade ties with Washington and stressing the need to reduce tensions over Kashmir between India and Pakistan. And on the day, Pakistan Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa's term was extended for another 3 years in view of the regional security environment. According to an announcement by Islamabad on Monday, Bajwa was due to retire in November this year. After the conversation, the PMO statement said, in the context of the regional situation, the Prime Minister stated that extreme rhetoric and incitement to anti-India violence by certain leaders in the region was not conducive to peace. He highlighted the importance of creating an environment free from terror and violence and eschewing cross-border terrorism without exception. The statement said the Prime Minister reiterated India's commitment to cooperate with anyone who followed this path in fighting poverty, illiteracy and disease. A White House statement on Monday night said, today President Donald J. Trump spoke with Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India to discuss regional developments and the United States-India strategic partnership. It added, the President conveyed the importance of reducing tensions between India and Pakistan and maintaining peace in the region. The 2 leaders further discussed how they will continue to strengthen United States-India economic ties through increased trade and they look forward to meeting again soon. The White House statement did not mention anything about a bilateral dialogue between India and Pakistan, which is different from the readout of the Trump-Khan phone call on Friday, where the US President had conveyed to Khan about the importance of India and Pakistan reducing tensions through bilateral dialogue regarding the situation in Jammu and Kashmir. By underlining the importance of a terror-free atmosphere, the Prime Minister has made it clear to the US President about the precondition for any bilateral dialogue between India and Pakistan. Last week, India's envoy to the UN, Saeed Akbaruddin, had said after the UNSC consultations on Jammu and Kashmir stopped terror to start talks. This was also the first call since Trump had suggested last month that Modi had asked for mediation on Kashmir, a claim denied by Delhi. Trump has backpedaled on the issue since then. Controversial Islamic preacher Zakir Naik has been banned from speaking in public in Malaysia, days after he allegedly made racial remarks against the country's ethnic Hindus and Chinese during a lecture. A circular was issued to all state-level police chiefs informing them about the ban, according to the Star Online. Yes, such an order has been given to all police contingents. This was done in the interest of national security and to preserve racial harmony. Royal Malaysian Police Corporate Communications Head Senior Assistant Commissioner Datuk Asmawati Ahmad told the website. On Monday, Naik was summoned to the Royal Malaysian Police Headquarters in Kuala Lumpur for the second time in recent weeks to record his statement in connection with the racial remarks. During a public lecture in Kota Baru on August 3rd, the 53-year-old preacher allegedly made controversial remarks against Malaysian Hindus and Malaysian Chinese, prompting calls for deportation to India. Naik, wanted by Indian authorities since 2016 for alleged money laundering and inciting extremism through hate speeches, reportedly said that ethnic Hindus in Malaysia enjoyed 100 times more rights than Muslims in India, and that they believed in the Indian government more than the Malaysian administration. In response to calls for his deportation to India, he reportedly suggested that Malaysian Chinese should leave the country as they were all guests. Reacting to Naik's controversial comments, Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir on Sunday said it was quite clear that Naik wanted to participate in racial politics. He is stirring up racial feelings. The police will have to investigate whether it is causing tension. Obviously, it is, he said. Mahathir added that as a permanent resident, Naik was not allowed to participate in politics. You can preach religiously, but he wasn't doing that, he said. He was talking about Chinese going back to China and Indians going back to India. I have never said such things, but he did. That is politics, the Malaysian Prime Minister said. Iceland has been commemorating the country's first glacier lost to climate change with a memorial plaque warning of the effects of global warming being installed at the site. Iceland officials, activists and others took part in a ceremony on Sunday that included poetry, silence and political speeches on the urgency of taking action to curb rising global temperatures. The disappearance of Okejokul, a glacier in the west of the subarctic island, is being seen as directly due to the warming of the climate caused by human activity. The plaque bears the words, "This monument is to acknowledge that we know what is happening and what needs to be done. Only you know if we did it." We see the consequence of the climate crisis, Icelandic Prime Minister Katrín Jakobsdóttir said. "We have no time to lose," she said. She would make talks on the climate crisis a priority at a meeting between Nordic leaders and German Chancellor Angela Merkel on Tuesday. Scientists warn that about 400 glaciers in Iceland risk the same fate, fearing that they will be gone by 2200. The country is losing approximately 11 billion tons of ice per year. Simon Howe, Associate Professor of Anthropology at Rice University, said that memorializing a lost glacier, I beg your pardon, empathizes what is being lost and disappearing all over the world. She said that a ceremony also draws attention to the fact that this is something that humans have accomplished, although it is not something we should be proud of. Jökull, meaning OK Glacier in Icelandic, became Iceland's first major ice floe to be officially stripped of its glacier status in 2014. It has now been called just OK, removing the glacier from its name. In 1890, Jökull covered 16 square kilometers, but by 2012 it measured just 0.7 square kilometers. The International Union for Conservation of Nature estimates that nearly half of the world's heritage sites could lose their glaciers by 2100 if greenhouse gas emissions continue at the current rate. The researchers hoped the commemoration would provoke feelings through the powerful use of symbols and ceremony. The most senior Catholic cleric found guilty of sexually abusing children will learn the outcome of his appeal on Wednesday, though the verdict still may not be the final word on his convictions for molesting 2 choir boys in an Australian cathedral more than 2 decades ago. The Victoria State Court of Appeal heard arguments from Cardinal George Pell's lawyers and prosecutors in June. In recognition of the intense public interest, the court is taking the unusual step of live streaming its judgment on his appeal. The 78-year-old former Vatican finance minister would walk free if the 3 judges acquit him of the 5 convictions. They also could order a retrial, in which case Pell would be released on bail, or they could reject his appeal. Pell has been in a Melbourne prison since March, when he was sentenced to 6 years for convictions on charges that he orally raped a 13-year-old choir boy and indecently dealt with the boy and the boy's 13-year-old friend in a rear room of St. Patrick's Cathedral in Melbourne in December 1996. He was also convicted of squeezing one of the boy's genitals in a cathedral corridor in February 1997. Pell had become Archbishop of Melbourne, Australia's second largest city, months before his crimes are alleged to have taken place, and had set up a world-first compensation arrangement for victims of clergy sexual abuse. He was described at his trial as the Vatican's 3rd most senior cleric. Prison authorities announced 2 weeks ago they were investigating whether Pell had breached rules by writing a letter dated August 1 that was circulated by his supporters on social media. Prison rules forbid prisoners from posting on social media, using the internet, or asking others to post on their behalf. "My faith in our Lord, like yours, is a source of strength," the 2-page handwritten letter said, thanking supporters for between 1,500 and 2,000 letters Pell had received in prison. "The knowledge that my small suffering can be used for good purposes through being joined to Jesus' suffering gives me purpose and direction," the letter added. The Department of Justice and Community Safety did not respond to a request on Monday for an update on the investigation into the suspected breach. One of the choir boys, identified by the sentencing judge as JJ, was the key prosecution witness. His friend, identified as MR, died of a heroin overdose in 2014 at the age of 31 without ever complaining he had been abused. Pell did not testify at either of his trials. But both juries saw a video of a police interview of him in Rome in 2016, in which Pell rejected all the allegations as absolutely disgraceful rubbish and a deranged falsehood, he said. Clerical sexual abuse and the Catholic Church's handling of such cases worldwide have thrown Pope Francis's papacy into turmoil. In a little more than a year, the Pope has acknowledged he made grave errors in Chile's worst cover-up. Pell was convicted of abuse, a French cardinal was convicted of failing to report a pedophile, and a 3rd cardinal, former US church leader Theodore McCarrick, was defrocked after a Vatican investigation determined he molested children and adults. A pro-Hong Kong protester says she has been targeted on social media after attending a pro-democracy rally in Adelaide's CBD last week. The harassment known as doxing was aimed at silencing critics of Beijing. Aski from Hong Kong, who did not want her name published, said she turned up to the protest at the University of South Australia on Friday without wearing a mask. Tensions quickly boiled over between pro-Hong Kong and pro-Beijing protesters, and she was captured on camera by a pro-Beijing supporter. She said the photo was then shared on Chinese social media app WeChat. She said less than an hour after the protest finished, she started receiving messages from her friends claiming her personal details had been shared widely on the platform. WeChat posts, which publicly reveal her full legal name, workplace, WeChat account and a photo of her at the protest. International Cyber Policy Centre and Australian Strategic Police Institute analyst Fergus Ryan said the spread of Aski's personal information online was classified as doxing. He said doxing was being used by Chinese nationalists to scare dissidents at home and abroad. It's intimidation, pure and simple. The aim of it is to have a chilling effect on the debate about whatever it is we are debating at any particular point in time, he said. The hope is the information about them will go viral and spread online, particularly within China, and that will help the authorities to identify who these people are. By revealing these people's personal information, you are putting them in very real danger of their family being locked up and mistreated in a many number of different ways. The Chinese government have the ability to stop these articles if they want to, but that's not happening, and so that tells me that this kind of behavior has the acceptance of the state, he said. Australians could face two-year jail sentences and fines of up to $25,200 under proposed laws that limit the use of cash to $10,000. A move some groups argue would create an Orwellian state by giving authorities greater control over people's finances. A number of stakeholders have called on the federal government to withdraw the proposed laws, which were first announced in the 2018-19 budget as part of measures to fight the so-called black economy. The government's Black Economy Task Force had argued a $10,000 cash limit for transactions between businesses and individuals would help fight the cash economy by stamping out tax evasion, money laundering, and other crimes. But some groups fear the laws could give the banks, which have faced much scrutiny under the Banking Royal Commission, too much control over people's money. The laws would apply to all payments made to businesses with an ABN for goods or services, affecting major purchases like cars, boats, housing and building renovations. The government has said the measure would not apply to individual transactions, such as private sales where the seller does not have an ABN, or cash payments to financial institutions. The laws, if passed, would take force on January 1, 2020 and for certain AUSTRAC reporting entities from January 1, 2021. If the new laws are passed, penalties for those exchanging more than $10,000 in cash would apply to both parties to the transaction, the payer and the receiving business. Senator Pauline Hanson said on her Facebook page the party was against the bill. The most recent Reserve Bank of Australia Payments Survey found that the use of cash is declining but still remains popular among Australians. In 2016, about 70% of survey participants reported holding some cash outside of their wallet, compared with about 75% in 2013. Most people held $100 or less, but about 3% said they held over $1,000. The most common reason for holding cash outside their wallet was for emergency transaction needs, but 26% also cited issues relating to the accessibility of cash, such ATM fees and access and withdrawal time. Namaskar. I'll be back next week with more news.